Another wide receiver to injury, James Washington, expected to be out 6 to 10 weeks with a foot injury. Here was Jerry Jones yesterday commenting on the status of his wide receiver room.
I don't want to be out here pushing, be aggressive as far as going outside, looking at what may be available that are free agents right now or otherwise. So I don't think it's urgent at all. I think we've got a lot of ways to throw the ball.
Okay, let's see if we all agree with that. Dan Orlovsky, I will start with you. Are the Cowboys in trouble?
No. The Cowboys can be fine if they utilize their 12 personnel grouping. There are multiple tight ends on the field. 12 personnel is one back and two tight ends. And I think their offense really needs to be built around their tight end Dalton Schultz and Sean McKeon and their draft pick out of Wisconsin, Jake Ferguson. They were going to be in trouble on the perimeter, Greeny, the moment they moved off from Amari Cooper, and Dak Prescott's salary is significantly high. CeeDee Lamb needs to play big football. But I think this offense is at its best. I think their quarterback is at its best and play caller is at its best when they have multiple tight ends on the field. They move him way more in that 12 personnel grouping than they do in 11. It allows his athleticism to be a big deal. You see the number on the screen. They were the best offense in the NFL last year when living in that 12 personnel. So I think that the immediate thought is, oh my gosh, they have no receivers. I don't think that should have been the strength of their offense to begin with back in February or March. So as long as they settle into that, and I texted Kellen Moore, their play caller, to do it, I think their offense will be okay.
All right, fair enough. And so, Diana, let me come to you because it's fine. Jerry Jones is, candidly, he's not going to come on the radio and say, oh, yeah, we're in big trouble and I need to go trade for somebody tomorrow. So regardless of what he said, do you expect some action here? Does the league expect some action? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't. And I actually disagree with you on that, Mike. I do think Jerry would have came out and said, yeah, we need to find a guy. We need to go search a free agency now. We need our scouts to give us a list of guys. You know, like that is the one thing I do love about covering Jerry is he'll tell you, and he'll say it eloquently. But, Dan makes a great point about what this offense is going to look like and be and how they are going to go back to that 2016, 2017 Cowboys look that we've been talking about over the last few weeks. I think it was actually Tony Romo who was the first one to point it out that they were kind of doing this whole back to the future thing. So while you don't see those headline names, right, on the receiver depth chart of, oh man, studs that, Dak needs these guys, it really truly won't matter because of the way they're going to be running this. And the fact that Dan is texting Kellen Moore about that is really good, Dan. I'm sure he's very grateful that you're giving him all this coaching assistance.
Nick, here's the thing. I think you will like where I wind up with this. Again, it's cousin Dak to Dominique. I think that Dak Prescott is actually a sneaky, interesting MVP candidate this year for the simple reason I do think we will see him run with the ball more because he's great at it, and hopefully he won't be hurt. He's been coming off of all these significant injuries and thus has been, I think, understandably hesitant to do it. The reason I do not see them going back to this 2016 and 17 offense is because they had Ezekiel Elliott then, and he was the best running back in the NFL then. And there is no running back whose career arc has gone the way his is, whoever gets back to that. Yeah. So that part of it I don't see.
And they don't have that offensive line that they had back then. So I think you're absolutely right that they will not be able to go back to that style. I like Dan's point about the 12 personnel. It's something Dan's been talking about for a long time, but I don't think the strength of Dak Prescott's game is his athleticism. I think it's his mental acumen. Like if you notice last year, Dak was one of the quarterbacks that I was most impressed by the decisions that he was making at the line of scrimmage. And I think that's what they need to do is put that power back into Dak's hands, and that will help them. And also, like, 21 personnel with two backs because Zeke and Pollard are both comfortable in the slot. So that's another advantage they could create.
I hear you. But what I'm saying is I think he has the added element that a small handful of quarterbacks in the league have, and they use very effectively. And he has done very little of that. Right. And maybe you add a little into that into the mix here if he is fully healthy, which he hasn't been in a long time. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, Greeny, he's going to have to do more with less. That's what we're asking Dak Prescott to do, but that's also why you pay a quarterback $40 million. But to your point, Nick, about the offensive line, losing Connor Williams, having to cut Lyle Collins as a cap casualty, those are going to be hard losses to overcome. And then you look at the skill position core, it's not what it has been since Dak got there in 2016. So he is going to have to do some heavy lifting, but here's what he does have in his favor. He plays in the NFC East. I mean, listen, I'm going ahead and assigning them 4 wins because they get to play the Giants and they get to play the Washington Commanders twice. All right, they swept the division from a year ago, so they can take care of their business in the division. I don't think they'll win the division. That's a story for another day. But the question that I have is this team good enough to do winning when it matters most in the postseason? With McCarthy and Dak Prescott, they're 6-9 against teams outside of the NFC East. That's the big question mark that Jerry Jones has to get figured out. And right now, I don't know that they have the personnel to be able to get them to do the winning he's looking for.
We will find out. I will just merely say, and I don't know if television does this justice, but I am distracted by the size disparity between Chris Canty and Dominique Foxworth. We have to find some way to illustrate this because, I mean, TV, I just...
You little.
Can both of you stand up and walk in front of the desk? I mean, the difference in size between these two men is so extraordinary. It's sort of...
What are you doing?
I can't get comfortable.
Ain't nobody scared of you.
It is. These two men did the same thing for a living. Okay, Scully, and thank you for all of the memories. In the meantime, the news of this day could not be further from that. We have a scandal that has rocked the National Football League. Dolphins owner Stephen Ross has been suspended and his team has been stripped of draft picks for tampering with Tom Brady. The NFL found that the Dolphins first illegally communicated with Brady in 2019, which was Brady's last year in New England. The NFL says the Dolphins did it again after last season while Brady was with the Buccaneers to try to recruit him as a limited partner and player. Meanwhile, in January, the league says the Dolphins had impermissible communication with Brady and Sean Payton's agent Don Yee about Payton joining Miami as head coach. At the time, he was under contract with the Saints. However, and quite importantly, the NFL says it found no evidence that the Dolphins intentionally lost games during the 2019 season. Remember, former coach Brian Flores has accused Ross of offering him $100,000 for every loss that season. Stephen Ross released this statement yesterday, saying the independent investigation cleared our organization on any issues related to tanking and all of Brian Flores' other allegations. As I've said all along, these allegations were false, malicious, and defamatory, and this issue is now put to rest. With regards to tampering, I strongly disagree with the conclusions and the punishment. However, I will accept the outcome because the most important thing is that there be no distractions for our team as we begin an exciting and winning season. I will not allow anything to get in the way of that. Now, in the statement that was released by the NFL, they said the tampering was unprecedented in scope and severity, and here are the punishments for it. The Dolphins have been stripped of their first-round pick this coming year and a third-rounder in 24. Ross himself has been fined $1.5 million and suspended through October 17th, and Dolphins Vice Chairman Bruce Beal has been suspended for the remainder of the 2022 season. Now, this is an issue around which everyone has a lot of very strong feelings, and the conversation exploded in our first hour. Dominique, you were not here, so we'll give you the floor first. What are your overriding takeaways from what was an extraordinary day?
Yeah, I listened earlier, and I thought everyone did a great job. Chris, you brought up an important point about how essentially they were railroading Brian Flores in that situation. They brought him in with no intentions of him succeeding, which seems unfair. Unprecedented in scope, in severity, to me feels like, to then read the statement from Stephen Ross afterwards, seems like he doesn't understand what they found. And to say that there was not tampering, yeah, they didn't find a smoking gun, but if you read the reports or if you read the articles that summarize the reports, it says quite clearly that Stephen Ross prioritized getting draft picks over winning. If the owner of the team is setting that tone culturally, then that to me is equivalent to tanking. So I understand that $1.5 million is a lot of money, and not being around the team till October 17th is a long time. However, if you have tampered with or tampered on three occasions, it affected 3 different teams, and it is unprecedented in its scope and severity. It seems like the punishment is too lenient, because the point of punishment is either to exact some sort of justice for the affected parties or to deter other teams from doing this in the future. This does neither. If I own a team and I have to take the risk to get a great quarterback, the risk I'm taking is I might have to give up a first and a third round draft pick and chill in my $1 billion estate for a couple extra weeks. Yeah, I'm taking that risk. So that's why I feel like this punishment is a little too lenient, because it does not take into account the people who were hurt most by this, which Brian Flores is number one, and these 3 other teams that were hurt by this, and it does not deter anybody from doing this going forward. So if this unprecedented thing happened, it's going to happen again, because if I'm looking at this, this is worth the risk.
Those 3 teams, of course, would be New England, Tampa, and New Orleans under these circumstances. Diana, fill in the blanks before I give Dan and Chris the floor of what you were hearing from around the league yesterday regarding the actions the NFL took.
Yeah, a little different than what Dom is getting into here in terms of just reaction. I was getting a lot of just kind of a celebration of it, like good, finally, because what they did was wrong. And for all those teams, owners, coaches, GMs, players, agents that are trying to do it the right way, they looked at yesterday as a victory for them, as those that are doing it the wrong way are going to be penalized. Does this mean this is going to change the way the NFL operates? Because there are sometimes tampering that goes on behind the scenes. You know, maybe this is a good slap on the wrist, a good reminder that Roger Goodell and the league, they're not going to stand for this. So, you know, in terms of the league's decision, most that I spoke to around the league yesterday felt like this was spot on.
So I think, because I can see some of the reaction that we have here, Dan, as I give it to you, there are 2 separate issues really that they're dealing with. Right. They're dealing with the tampering, which I think is, while they're saying it's unprecedented in scope and severity, it is still something that does sort of happen all the time. And they were slapped hard for that. A slap on the first-round pick is a big deal. It's not nothing.
No, I agree. It's not nothing.
The incentivizing losing piece of this, which they said they did find some evidence of. I was just literally reading but that it did not rise to the level that it was being suggested. That's the part of this that I think a lot of, that's the sort of thing that gets your team taken away from you, because it really goes to the integrity of the sport. Danny, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's the line of demarcation, Greeny. I mean, we in the NFL have a legal tampering period before free agency starts. So we know that's a conversation that happens. Dom, the penalty is harsh for the tampering. I think it's a fair, harsh penalty that the hammer was dropped down, and Roger Goodell and the NFL are trying to curb this from happening in the future like this. And I said this morning, imagine the Cincinnati Bengals without Jamar Chase. Then you're going to sit there and go, man, that first-round pick's a big deal. Or the Chargers without Justin Herbert. That first-round pick is a big deal. And the $1.5 million in the grand scope for Stephen Ross is a drop in the bucket. I get all that. But they did not penalize for the potential of tanking or losing on purpose. To Greeny's point, the study says that there was no, at least to their findings, incentivizing to Brian Flores financially to lose. Now, if we want to have the conversation that what happened in regards to Brian Flores was wrong, the day that this came out, I think we all agreed Brian Flores was set up to fail. And it seems like Sean Payton was going to step in there and reap the benefits of his fall and failure. That's a different conversation. But these penalties levied were not in regards to that.
So first of all, you're right. That is a different conversation. But considering that Brian Flores is a black coach, I think that's an important conversation that should be factored in. And you cherry picking outstanding, amazing, once-in-a-lifetime first-round picks is a whole nother story. They're not saying we're going to come onto your team and take away a future Hall of Famer. They're saying we're taking away a first-round pick, which more often than not does not turn out to be an all-pro, Pro Bowl, or whatever. So I just don't think that if the point is to deter teams, and you can answer this honestly, anyone who is here can answer this honestly. Would you try again to go after Tom Brady if only thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to lose a first and a third-round pick? That's the point I'm making. This does not deter anybody. If you want this to stop, and if you are sincere in the unprecedented nature that you say this was, then you would come down harsher on someone who is worth billions of dollars. That's all.
So I want to get Chris in here, and I have time trouble here. So, Tori, here's what I want to do. I'm now going to produce the show from sitting here, which everyone's going to yell at me because this is not my job, but I have no choice. Let's take a break. Let's come back and let's take this conversation forward, because I haven't even gotten Chris Canty in on this yet. Obviously, Dan has a lot more to say. I can read you literally verbatim what the NFL found regarding the Brian Flores stuff, and then you can make up your